Welcome. We're going to get started in just 1 minute. Welcome. I'm going to give folks just 1 more minute to join and then we will get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Julie Noble, and this is the City of Kingston's Organic Diversion Program public meeting. I'm going to give a moment to Carla Castillo, who will introduce our Spanish interpretation for this meeting. Carla?
Bienvenidos todos, gracias por reunirse con nosotros hoy. La función de interpretación ya está activada. Para acceder a la función desde su computadora, busque el globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla y elija interpretación de idiomas. Luego seleccione su canal de idioma para acceder a la función desde su teléfono o tableta. Busque los 3 puntos en la parte inferior de su pantalla y toque más. Luego, interpretación de idiomas. Seleccione su canal de idiomas y toque finalizar. Es algo muy fácil y solo tiene que buscar el globo. Gracias y bienvenidos.
Thank you, Carla. And also thank you to Veronica from the Hudson Valley Language Justice Collective. Again, my name is Julie Noble, and I am the project manager in this case and the sustainability coordinator for the City of Kingston. And thank you for joining us for today's presentation about the city's Kingston Organics program. I'd like to welcome Eleanor Peck and Carla Castillo from the Hudson Valley Regional Council. They are going to be helping me present this presentation today. And we can go to the next slide. Today's agenda is we will do our introductions and go over a few housekeeping things. And then the folks from the Hudson Valley Regional Council will do a high-level plan overview. I will go over the implementation plan for Kingston Organics, how it will work, and then we will have time for questions and answers. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to type them into the chat. And you can type them into the chat in English or in Spanish. And we will address questions along the way if there's something pretty simple, and we will address all of the questions during the Q&A period at the end of the presentation. So I'd like to turn it over to Eleanor and Carla for introductions.
Hi, my name is Carla Castillo. I'm the Executive Director at the Hudson Valley Regional Council. We're a council of governments that works with local governments throughout the 7-county Mid-Hudson region, and we were very honored and proud to work with Julie Noble and the City of Kingston on this Kingston Organics Diversion Study, which, as Eleanor will walk through, is a program that will be very beneficial to the city on a number of different levels. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you find this interesting.
Thank you. My name is Eleanor Peck, and I'm the Clean Energy Communities Manager at Hudson Valley Regional Council. Start. So the City of Kingston applied for and received a New York Department of Environmental Conservation Climate Smart Communities grant to complete multiple Climate Smart Communities certification actions and determine the economic and social viability of implementing composting in the City of Kingston. The plan is available on the city's Engage Kingston website for review, and you can click this link to get there when you receive these slides. This is our thank you slide, and it is absolutely packed. That is because the City of Kingston and Hudson Valley Regional Council staff working on the plan were assisted by many city departments, volunteers, stakeholders, and organizations along the way. Thank you so much to everyone who had a part in creating this plan. Just briefly, I want to explain what composting is. I realize some of you might already know that, but just so we all have that in our knowledge base. Composting is the slow breakdown of organic materials by microbes. It requires aeration, moisture, and self-sustained heat to process organic materials into a fertilizer or soil amendment. Food scraps can be composted rather than landfilled. This reduces methane emissions from landfilling food scraps and potentially vehicle emissions from transporting food waste to a landfill. Composting food scraps is not currently mandatory overall in New York State, like recycling is. However, the state is moving in that direction. The Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, passed in 2019, directed the state to create a scoping plan as the framework for how New York is going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The scoping plan was just recently adopted, and it calls for the significant reduction of disposal of organics, including requiring all food scrap generators to recycle food scraps by 2028. While that is currently just a plan, there are laws on the books at the state level about recycling food scraps. Currently, New York State requires large generators of food scraps to donate and recycle excess food if they're within 25 miles of a recycler of food scraps. This includes only businesses and institutions that generate more than 2 tons of food scraps per week on average, places like colleges and grocery stores. Some entities that meet that criteria, like hospitals and K-12 schools, are exempt from the law as well. Ulster County has a similar rule, but it applies to smaller generators. This year, the Ulster law applies to generators producing 0.75 tons of food waste per week, and next year it's going to go down to 0.5 tons. So locally, there is precedence for this project, this organics project, through the Kingston 2030 Climate Action Plan, which calls for establishing organic waste collection and implementing the final recommendations of this plan. Kingston Sanitation Department hauls most residential and some small commercial waste within the city. You can see the collection points by type and day in the chart here. This means the city has control over how it collects and processes its food waste, and it makes the city well situated to taking on a substantial change to that process. The city is a leader in the state and, frankly, the nation in sustainability, publishing its first climate action plan in 2010 and being one of the very first climate smart silver certified communities. The city is also a significant distance from its solid waste facility. And this really shows that. So Kingston produces more than 7,500 tons of refuse per year and sends it 480 miles round trip to Seneca Meadows landfill. This map here shows the distance all of Kingston's trash travels. This costs nearly $800,000 per year to the city in tipping fees. And the estimated greenhouse gas impact of landfilling those food scraps is more than 2,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So now that we've uncovered why the city undertook the study, here's what the study entailed. There is significant opportunity to dispose of food waste more effectively to save money and greenhouse gas emissions, but there are not a lot of neighboring communities implementing food scrap programs at scale. That's why the city put a lot of time and effort into becoming a replicable model. This slide shows exactly what went into the report, confirming the availability of products and technologies for composting at home and at scale, including municipal collection and a feasibility of locations to compost in the city. The report also contains a survey of the community, waste audits of municipal buildings and events, case studies of other municipalities across the country doing similar programs, and a cost-benefit analysis and greenhouse gas emissions estimates. Finally, the report also covers draft code changes if the city does decide to implement the recommendations and provides funding opportunities. Now we're going to get into the findings of the report. So this has to do with the stakeholders, what we found after interviewing many different stakeholders. We found there was overall support for composting program in the city, and these meetings that we had with these stakeholders highlighted potential challenges such as staffing capacity and the potential for contamination of food scraps with other waste. And they also gave us recommendations, such as the need for a very detailed education and outreach campaign to make the program successful. Volume. So the plan contains a really detailed analysis of the city's municipal solid waste. I was not part of it. I'm a little glad, but they definitely went through the trash in the city of Kingston's municipal buildings. They developed a combined diversion rate of 35.29% of the city's municipal solid waste is food scraps, and conservatively estimated the amount that's actually going to be collected if a curbside program is implemented. And they say that would be about 16.51% of the total. All of these estimated savings that we're going to go through in the coming slides, such as cost and greenhouse gas emissions, use the very conservative estimate, that 16.1%, rather than the 35%. So you can really tell the difference that the program is going to make. So logistics. During the plan's creation, HVRC staff and City of Kingston staff visited multiple facilities nearby. The City of Kingston transfer station was examined as a potential location for a new composting facility, and nearby facilities were toured and interviewed to see if they would be viable options as well. The map here is pretty small, although hopefully you can see it. The orange flags show locations that were determined to be viable as drop-off food locations, and the yellow flags are for small-scale uses and neighborhood composting. Environmental benefits. So again, using that conservative estimate of how many food scraps are going to be diverted through a program, the study found that the city could reduce emissions by more than 1,500 metric tons of CO2, the equivalent of taking more than 300 cars off the road each year, not driving more than 3 million, almost 4 million miles, or planting more than 25,000 seedlings. We used two different methods to determine this. The EPA has a tool called the WARM 15 tool, or a waste reduction modeling tool. And also we used a stop waste calculator. And we also calculated the vehicle miles traveled for trucks transporting the waste to and from Seneca Meadows landfill using a method from the Environmental Defense Fund. Cost savings. The study also did a detailed analysis of the potential cost savings from implementing composting, using a method that averaged the cost and the tonnage year to year. Not paying the tipping fees to landfill food scraps saves a significant amount of money. It's anticipated that because this conservative collection rate is being used, and even the conservative collection rate shows that the city could reduce their costs by $179,840. The potential cost savings, if the city goes beyond the 16% collection rate, could be well over $2 million over 6 years. These are our high-level recommendations from the report. We suggest instituting an organics diversion program, including a phased curbside food waste collection program and drop-off locations for composting food scraps. We also suggest increased promotion of backyard composting and on-site composting for small commercial entities. And we recommend implementing a program for municipal buildings, facilities, and events as well. We recommend using an existing facility nearby. There was not really a viable Kingston-owned location. The transfer station was not going to work. We recommend updating the municipal code to reflect the program's implementation. We recommend distributing residential bins to folks in the city of Kingston and having a dedicated recycling coordinator to manage this program. We also note that there are significant funding opportunities for these programs, and that we suggest the city should apply for them. Now I'm going to pass it off to Julie Noble to discuss the program's implementation in the city of Kingston.
Thank you, Eleanor. So as Eleanor mentioned, for the past 4 to 5 years, the city, we have been working directly with Hudson Valley Regional Council to evaluate the feasibility. And when receiving these recommendations and reviewing the final results of the feasibility and the recommendations, and having lengthy discussions with the administration and the Department of Public Works and the Sanitation Division, the city has decided to move forward with phase 1 of Kingston Organics. Phase 1, and I will get into later what future phases may look like, but phase 1 has launched. It actually launched last week, and it will be a voluntary, free, registration required, drop-off food scraps collection program. It will be located at 11 different secure community sites, as well as 8 municipal sites in municipal buildings. It will be free to city residents, and that is only residents of the city of Kingston proper. So having a Kingston address, such as folks who live in the town of Ulster, unfortunately, you are not eligible. But I do encourage you to speak with your town supervisors to implement a program such as this. This program is voluntary, and so folks will need to register, and I'll go through that process. But it also does not include the city providing any containers to residents. You will use your own container at home and bring the food scraps to a designated site. And I'll walk through that process in a moment. But let's first look at the drop-off locations. Next slide. Registration started last week and is ongoing, but the actual collection of food scraps will begin in July. I hope to start it the last week in June, but for now we're saying the beginning of July. When you register, and I'll speak about that in a moment, you will choose which community site you prefer. And so the sites are 11 sites in municipal parks, and they will be open 24 hours a day. So the sites are the Andy Murphy Midtown Neighborhood Center on Broadway, Block Park, downtown on Abeale Street, Barman Park in Midtown on South Prospect, the Everett Hodge Center in Midtown on Franklin Street, Forsyth Park, uptown on Lucas Ave, Hasbrook Park, downtown on Delaware Ave, Hutton Park, just sort of in Midtown on Grant, Lauren Park, which is in the Roosevelt Park area to the north of, in the northern part of Kingston on Manor Place, Kingston Point Park, downtown on Delaware Ave by the river, the Rondout Community Garden, which is downtown right off of 9W, and the Rondout Neighborhood Center on Lower Broadway. So each resident will choose which site they prefer and will have access to that site. Now, what does access look like? Let's go to the next slide. I will talk about registration, but once the program itself is launched, this is what the sites will look like. These are not our actual sites. As you can see, these signs say things like Hoboken and other towns, but we are using the same model. So it will be a storage shed, which will be locked, and it will have a lock on the top and a lock on the bottom. And each resident who registers will get a welcome packet. I'll go into that in a moment. And it will give you a combination to this storage container. We have chosen to use locked storage containers for several reasons. One is that they are more secure for animals or other unwanted, I guess, animals that would get into it. But also I want to be sure that we're not importing trash from elsewhere, other communities, and also that we don't have folks walking by that haven't been trained or don't know what the program is and using it as a trash can, because it is really important to us to minimize contamination. And I'll get to that in a moment as well. There are going to be these sites, and there will be totes inside of them, 64-gallon totes with liners, compostable liners. And so the residents will come along, they will unlock with their code the top flap, open the tote, dump their food inside, close the tote, lock the container, and drive away. After several days, the City Department of Public Works, who will, as Eleanor mentioned, is already our municipal sanitation hauler. We will be driving around in an existing trash packer and going to each individual site, unlocking the bottom doors, pulling out the totes, dumping those into the back of our packer, and then driving them only 5 miles away to Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency, where it will be processed. So as the plan determined, we as a municipality don't have the capacity or space to be managing the compost ourselves. And so our closest option is Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency, with which we have an established relationship. There are other composting facilities in the area, as Eleanor mentioned, which we looked into, but this is our closest and we have the established relationship there. So at that site, they will be composting the food scraps, they mix it with wood chips, and then they compost it using aerated static piles, which are long piles with hot air blown into them, which within less than several months turns it into compost, which they sell. And it is then available to the public for purchase. I will remind everyone that this is only for Kingston residents. There are other options in our area for sure, for people that certainly there are many folks using existing composting companies, private vendors already, and Community Compost Company is one of those that has paved the way in our area for opening up the door to folks to compost. And many of our residents and many of our businesses here in Kingston do employ Community Compost Company. So any commercial businesses, I do recommend looking at options. And I also know that Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency also accepts commercial compost. And so that would be an option there. But these sites are just for residents. So I'll get into more about the other things in just a moment, but let's talk about what you can and cannot compost. Let's go to the next slide. By the way, there's signs that you'll see on those pictures where there are signs from the other communities, but there will be very clear signs posted on each storage shed that have all the contact information for people who don't know about it and want to know what's going on and want to register. And there will be another sign that has all of the yes and no's of what are accepted and what are not accepted. So our intent is to have this fully contained so it looks nice and clean and crisp, and also so that the smells and anything else are contained. The totes are going to be washed regularly, and they're going to be monitored regularly by Parks Department staff, Department of Public Works staff, and myself to make sure that we maintain the process, how that should be going on. So what can and cannot be composted? With this program, we are working directly with Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency. And so there are certain things that can and cannot be accepted based on their regulations, but also since they are producing a saleable product, we need to make sure that we don't have contamination, because they would not be able to remove that contamination, and also would then not be able to sell and process the compost. So what is accepted? All food scraps. If it is food, it is accepted. That means meat and bones, dairy, vegetables and fruits, breads and grains, eggs and shells, coffee grounds and filters, food soiled papers, tea bags. What is not accepted? Not food. Anything that's not food. It is what it is. So plastic, metal, glass, animal waste, not accepted. Styrofoam or any packaging, not accepted. Bulk liquids, bulk grease, any coated paper, any chemicals, any wax cardboard, any yard waste, plastic bags, and compostable bags. I'm going to speak to two of those things specifically. One is yard waste. We know that many of these things on the several of these things on the not acceptable list are compostable on a commercial scale. However, there are different systems here in place that we need to be aware of with this Kingston Organics drop-off collection system. One, we already as a municipality collect yard waste in separate yard waste bags. It is processed separately in a separate facility and has separate regulations. So that means that we're not putting our leaves in here. We're not putting our garden fodder in here. We're not putting any kind of branches or any kind of yard waste whatsoever. No grass clippings. This is for food only. The other thing I should mention is compostable bags. Although there are more and more regulations, let me not say regulations, more and more standards for compostable products, and the BPI has a system where they can certify that something is compostable. We, as a municipality, when we are engaging hundreds of families, can't regulate and manage what people are purchasing. So for us to say, oh, we will only accept this brand of bag or this brand of, compostable bowl, whatever, I have no way of controlling that. And so we have decided to not permit any compostable products such as spoons, bowls, cups, and bags. That means that when folks come to drop things off, they will need to empty if you put your compost in a bag at home, which is fine, you will just need to dump it out of the bag when you arrive, and there will be a garbage can there for you to put it in. Unfortunately, we have to minimize any possible contamination, and some bags that are labeled as compostable in stores may be made of types of plastic that are not compostable really in the composting facility that we're using, and we have to be able to, it's easier for us to minimize it by not including bags. Let's go to the next slide. So how does it work? And this is an actual picture that I took the other day at Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency when we were there, when an actual truck was offloading, and it was amazing. And anyone who knows Julie Noble knows that I was right up close and personal and I was so excited about the whole thing. But here's how the process works. You register, you generate food scraps at home in your own container, you put them in your vehicle or walk them over, however you're going to get to, and go to the location where you chose for your drop-off site. You can drop off your food scraps only without bags to the designated site 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It is year-round. DPW will come and collect those food scraps weekly, and they will be brought to the local facility. As you can see in this picture in the foreground, this is a load that came from a food generator that collects, a vendor that collects food waste. And in the background, you will see what has already started to be processed and wood chips that will be mixed in. It is an incredible process. And when we went there were no animals, no vectors, no things that there shouldn't have been. It wasn't stinky. It was impressive. They were well organized with their process. And we are confident in working with this facility that this will be a good solution for us as well. That being said, let's look at some common concerns. So I'll go to the next slide. Will I be getting another humongous bin? That is everyone's first question. Oh, Julie, are you giving me a huge bin? No, I am not. So we are not giving you a huge bin. I know you have already, if you're a Kingston resident, a recycling blue and yellow and a brown tote. You are not getting a large tote. You're not getting any tote with phase one. And so it's for drop off only. You will bring your food in your own container. And that could be a compost container you have on your counter that you purchased. It could be a coffee can. It could be your hand. It could be whatever you want to bring it in. But I'm not giving you a tote for this phase. Future phases that I'll speak to in a moment, we may provide totes or bins, but they would be significantly smaller, nothing near the 64 or 96 gallon totes that you have now. Will it attract rodents and bugs? Won't it smell? So all of these, as I mentioned, and you saw in the system, they have latching lids that are going to be emptied weekly and cleaned regularly. And so we are very, very, very much cognizant of the fact that we want this to be successful and are going to do everything we can to minimize any deterrence or issues with this entire process. Myself and my team at DPW will be watching this extremely closely, and we will be monitoring throughout the process. With the registration, which I'll get to in a minute, we will also be we will know who is using each site. So if I start to see any contamination, I will reach out to those residents that are using that site, and we'll have that discussion, and trainings will be provided. And I'll get to that in a minute as well. Is there a maximum amount that I can compost? And also, is there a minimum amount? There is not a minimum amount and not a maximum amount. And we're not capping how many people can register. So tell everyone you know, registration is as many people as we can take, and there's not a maximum amount. I will say If you're going to have a summer party and serve an entire middle school watermelon and you have 400 watermelons left over, you might want to communicate with me so we don't fill up the totes. So if you're having a bulk amount of something, contact us first, but that doesn't mean that you won't be able to put it there. Once it gets to be Halloween season, we're also going to collect pumpkins, but we'll probably put them outside of the tote because I don't want all the totes filled with pumpkins either. So we will communicate with me if you have things that are bulk. The exception for the bulk is that we are not accepting bulk liquids or bulk grease. What about contamination? Is someone going to pick through it? No, they are not. And so we've had this conversation very acutely with our laborers here at Parks and also at Department of Public Works, because they would also certainly be concerned with that. No one is being asked to pick through any of this, which is why it is important for each resident to know that contamination is a big deal and that we do not accept contamination at all, meaning anything that's not food. And so here's the thing. When we bring our food scraps out to Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency, if they find contamination, they won't accept it as compost, and they will then charge us a fee for solid waste instead, and it will be diverted to the solid waste stream, which defeats the purpose, costs us money, and means that it will be shipped to Seneca Meadows as opposed to being processed on site. So for many reasons, environmental and health-wise, it's really important that we don't have contamination. All right, next slide, please. How do you register? So you can register in a number of different ways. Registration is open. It started last week. And as of now, as of just looking about a couple minutes ago, we have 89 families registered with over 220 individuals. And they are from all around the city. People from all across the community have already started to register. I will say, of the numbers we've gotten in so far, I've had 5 families that are not Kingston residents that have registered that unfortunately I will have to tell them that this program does not apply. Unfortunately, I cannot accept compost from non-Kingston residents. And that is for several reasons, one of which is that it would be against our code to import trash from another community into ours. But also we are managing this for our own municipality here, and we encourage other communities to do so in their own communities as well. So registration, you can scan on this QR code as we speak. You can put your phone right up to the computer and take a picture. You can go on our website, which is engagekingston.com/Kingston-organics. It has all of the information. It has the final study that Hudson Valley Regional Council produced. It has paper registration. If you would like to print out a paper registration and mail it in to me or drop it off at my office, that's fine. Or you can register right online. It also has all the locations and all the information that you would find there. And I'll continue to post additional information on that site. When you register, you're going to be asked a few questions, simple questions. What is your name? What is your address, phone number, and email? How many people are in your household, which lets us know how many people we are serving. Do you currently compost? Which is really just informational for me. And as of right now, with the 220 people that have registered, 58% of folks so far don't currently compost, 42% do. And I'm also asking generally, how much do you think you're going to compost or produce in a week? I know that's a question that might be difficult if you've never tracked it, but it's a good number for us to just know, hey, maybe folks don't create a lot of food waste, so they maybe have a smaller generation amount, or maybe they produce a lot. It gives us a gauge to understand how many different totes we need to set up at each site. The registration comes to me and I keep that all together. And once you register, you will be receiving a welcome packet. So let's go to the next slide. In this welcome packet, it's going to have a letter that has all the information, and will have also information about training. So you do not need to know how to compost in order to do this. And by the way, knowing how to compost really just means taking food out of going into your trash and putting it in another container and bringing it to the site. It's as simple as that, but there will be trainings. There will be a map of all the different locations. So when you register, you will be given a unique lock combination, but you will have an option to go to the different sites. We prefer that you go to the site that you chose, but you could, in theory, go to a different site. There will be a guide to composting food scraps, which, just like I went over before, but which will articulate what is accepted and what is not. So you can put that on the refrigerator. You can also You'll get a food scraps only sticker, which is something that you'll be able to put on your container at home, and that will be able to tell everyone at home, you know, this is for food scraps, to remind everyone. You're going to get a guide to our local organics recovery facility. So we're working very closely with Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency, and they are going to help us to understand how their process works, so people know why they're doing this. There will also be a compostable products guidance document. So if you, even though we're not accepting compostable products, we do strongly encourage it. And so there will be a guide for you purchasing those. There'll be a home guide to reducing food waste, because although we are collecting food waste, the number one step really is to reduce the amount of food waste in the first place. So we'll be encouraging that. There will be an organics frequently asked questions flyer. So everything that you could possibly want to know will be on that FAQ, and you can keep that on the fridge. There will be a recycling flyer just in case. So I always have an opportunity to remind people how you should be recycling. So I'll stick one of those in there, and then contact information, which will be for myself, Julie Noble. And I am the program manager for this Kingston Organics. And you can call me, email me, come by and see me anytime. So everyone who registers will get a welcome packet. I haven't sent them out yet, and I don't actually know how I'm going to do that. I don't know if I'm going to mail it or bring it to people, but I'm going to figure that out. So I have a month still. All right, let's go to the next slide. How do I get more information? One, I've never composted before. Is there going to be training? Yes, there is. As I mentioned, there will be training. I will offer training as often as I need, as people want to. When it gets closer to the end of June, I will be having a training at each site. And people can just stop by and see the site and learn about it and what they should do. And of course, you'll have your welcome packet. And how do you get more information? Here you see the Engage Kingston site. You can email me at recycling@kingston-ny.gov. You can call me. I'm the recycling coordinator for the city as well. And so my number is 845-481-7339. I see my phone is ringing as we speak, so this is fantastic. And so that is how you can get in touch with any questions whatsoever. And let's go to the next slide. In addition to the community sites, there are also, this phase one also includes rolling out food collection in 8 municipal buildings. And so those 8 municipal buildings, which will be collected for the staff at the buildings, but also any events in those buildings or meetings in those buildings, is also going to start at the same time. And so this is not for you to bring your food scraps from home. This is if you are in one of those buildings and you happen to be at a meeting with food, or if you are an employee in one of these meetings and you are eating something with you know, a banana peel or whatever, or you have lunch leftovers. So the Andy Murphy, there are 3 community centers: the Andy Murphy Midtown Neighborhood Center on Broadway, the Hodge Center on Franklin Street, and the Rondout Center on Lower Broadway. Our 3 fire stations, which produce an incredible amount of food, as there are firefighters living and eating there 24 hours a day. Probably not eating 24 hours a day, but maybe they can if they want to. And then there is also at City Hall, we will be collecting food scraps, and at the police department. So our 8 main public buildings, we will be starting this system as well, starting in the end of June or the beginning of July. Next slide, please. So I keep talking about phase 1. What does future phases mean? I want to be clear that we don't really know yet. And that is why we are doing this in phases. We are doing this in phases because we need to understand several different things. Although the recommendations and the plan, the feasibility study, clearly articulate that this is a feasible thing in the city, there are many different logistics that we need to figure out to make it happen. And we also need to understand the temperature of the community. Are people interested in doing this? I will say, in the 7 days that this has been out, and including in this 45 minutes that we've been sitting here, I've already gotten 4 more registrations. I can see on my email as they're coming in, which is fantastic. So we're using phase 1 to understand, to inform phases 2 and 3. Phase 1 is currently being done within our current general fund. We have no additional staff added. We have no additional vehicles added. The totes that we're using are pre-existing totes. The only thing I'm purchasing is the sheds that we need to buy and the signage. And I'm working with Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency on all of the outreach materials. And everyone should have gotten one of these flyers at home if you're a Kingston resident, which is hopefully how you found out about this meeting. And so this first phase has been extremely low budget. Future phases, which could include and will likely include a commercial, citywide commercial pickup, which would mean a tote at commercial businesses like restaurants, and a possible future phase of residential curbside, meaning a tote at your curb. None of these phases would be mandatory. They would all be voluntary and all by registration. As Eleanor mentioned before, composting is not mandated on a state level. This is a choice the city has made. We are not being pressured into doing this. We are not being told to do this. We have decided this is the right thing to do. This is the environmentally responsible thing to do, and fiscally, it is a fiscally responsible thing to do. As Eleanor mentioned before, for every ton of food waste we divert from going into the solid waste stream, we're saving $90 a ton by bringing it to Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency. And it is the right thing to do because we're not shipping it across New York State. It's being processed locally into a local valuable fertilizer. So future phases could mean you could have a tote at your curbside and you don't have to get in your car with your food waste and we would pick it up. But all of those things come with additional costs, including additional vehicles, trucks, additional staff, sanitation laborers, additional totes, additional bags, additional time, additional everything else. And many more logistics that we would need to work out with our local facility like Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency. We plan to take this time during this registration to understand how many people are interested in doing this and figure out the logistics, because we do need to focus on planning the budget for future phases pretty soon. And so this current phase one will inform future phases. Next slide, please. So here's my timeline. One, if you would like to review the study that we completed, I highly encourage you to read it. It is 700 pages long. I highly encourage you to start now because you only have till June 30th. You have 35 days to read it and 700 pages long. You can flip through it. You can come to my office and read it in paper if you'd like. But I highly encourage you to take a look at it. And if you have any comments, send them to me. My email's here on the screen. So we're accepting comments on that until June 30th. Registration for phase one is ongoing and it is open. There's no cap. Just keep registering, which I see is happening again. I got two more registrations as we're sitting here. This is so exciting. So collection starts in the beginning of July and it will go year round. We will be evaluating, the Department of Public Works and myself and the administration will be evaluating the logistics of phase two from July through December. Now we put out the budget, the Common Council and the mayor agree on the budget in fall. And so if we do need to buy a packer or increase our staff, there's decisions we need to make pretty fast. We also understand that there's a large difference between a drop-off program and a curbside program. Meaning right now, if you're signing up for a drop-off, you're willing to put your yucky food in your vehicle and drive it to a place. And that is quite an effort. And future phases might mean just walking out and putting a tote out there. Either way, we will do surveys and we will be understanding from the community what the temperature would be on actually doing these things and using that to inform future phases. We'll putting together the proposed budget for phase two in this fall. And again, I don't know if phase two is going to be commercial or residential. We don't know the answer to that yet. We have lots of things to figure out. But implementation of phase two, should this continue on this timeline, will likely be next year. Then next year, we will evaluate logistics for the following phase and implement that in the following year after that. That is our goal. Things always change. It has taken us a long time and a lot of work to get to where we are right now. And so this is our goal, but we are working through our goal and it is going swimmingly so far. Next slide, please. So that is all the things that I feel like I am going to present at this point, but I'm going to turn over to Carla, who has been monitoring our Q&A to bring up any questions that I can answer or she can answer. And certainly if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat, to email me, to call me, any of those things. But let's go to the Q&A now.
Thank you so much. Hearing the overview of the presentation given by Eleanor and by Julie makes me even more proud to have participated and embarked on this journey with the City of Kingston and Julie Noble, because I'm hoping that one day the city will have to deal with 300 watermelons, and the visualization of the different phases, how they will be implemented, how the program will be implemented is, in my opinion, perfectly detailed, and really gives you a sense of everything that's involved in implementing a program like this for a city as large as Kingston, or as some of you may think, as small as Kingston, but Kingston is not small. So now on to the questions. I also want to thank Veronica for her interpretation, and I will try not to speak too fast so that it is easy for anybody else who needs to have all this relayed in Spanish. Okay, the first question that we had came from Mary Brimmer, and I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Will phase 1 include an educational component? Julie, you talked about materials and some training, so I was wondering if maybe you could speak a little bit more in depth about what the training will look like. Will you have like set days when people will come? Just a little bit more on that. Thank you.
Sure. So in the month of June, we plan to have trainings at all the municipal buildings for all municipal staff, but also trainings on the individual community sites. So there will be a designated time, probably after the workday, in the early evening, at each individual site for people to come by and learn about how to use their facility, and also to learn about where the facility is at each park. Although I did have a list of where the parks are. Many of these parks are very large, so I want everyone to know where the sites are. Of course, you could go to any of the different trainings, but that will be the case. And then there's also going to be the welcome packet, which has quite a bit of information in it. There will be more information posted on Engage Kingston, and certainly lots of times, and if the demand warrants it, I will do more training, more webinars, more trainings online. That's absolutely fine as well. I will say Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency has an incredible amount of information on their website as well. And we've learned so much through them and through other partners, including Community Compost Company also. So there will be trainings available for sure. And certainly anytime, like I said, in the packet, you're going to get my business card. Any questions at all, you could certainly call me and say, you know, Jules, I don't know if this thing can go in there. And so I will help you with that. So there should be, you know, don't feel worried about it at any time whatsoever. I will also say that the registration is available in Spanish. The form to fill out, if you want to fill out paper registration, is available in Spanish. This is being live interpreted in Spanish and will be posted on the website. You know, we're doing what we can to get out to the community. It's been on the radio in English and Spanish. If you listen to WKNY Radio Kingston, you'll hear my voice on there and a Spanish version as well. So we're trying to get the word out as much as possible. And if more information is needed by the community, we will produce more information and make sure you get it in your hands. Great question.
Thanks, Julie. I'm particularly pleased for to hear about the show and tell, because show and tell is always in general a very important educational tool, but particularly when it comes to composting, because it can get very confusing for what people hear, on the web versus how it actually should be implemented. I'm going to jump to the last comment that we got. Peter Criswell.
Really quick. Or yeah.
Oh, sure.
Could you go back to the slide that has the QR code on it? You could just keep that up while we're chatting here. That'd be great.
Excellent. And that was exactly where I was going to go. So I was wondering if you could also, I don't know if this works from a screen, but Peter asked for posting the registration QR code. I don't know if it needs to be posted in the chat, but I think probably you're addressing it right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you can see the slide right now, you could do it right there from that.
Okay, great.
I will say, and for full transparency, when you register, it will make you register for Engage Kingston. If you don't feel like registering for Engage Kingston, you can click on the right-hand side where the information is on the Engage Kingston page. You can click on the registration form, And you could print that out and send it to me. You won't have to register for Engage Kingston at all. The only reason we do that is so we can continue to have, connection with our constituents. We have a lot of different services on Engage Kingston. And when you go there, you'll notice all the different programs that we're providing, and the registration just permits you to do things like surveys and all that. There's no cost to it, but it will have you go through that step.
Okay, now I'm going to jump to a question about, let's see, where is that question? I think it was from Mary Brimmer. Yes, perhaps some additional education on what makes a bin suitable for residents. So Mary, for that, I will direct you to the appendices, the draft appendices that is on the City of Kingston website, and to Appendix F, which is bins, liners, and totes. We did an exhaustive review of the available bins, liners, and totes that are available on the market, and there's quite a bit. And when there's quite a bit available on the market, that's how you know how something is taken off, and is a good path to be following. And all of the liners that are on there are BPI certified and ASTM D6400 certified compostable materials, just so that you know. So this is like this meets the criteria for a number of composting facilities. Some are a little bit more stringent, but in terms of bins and totes, that is a good go-to, so that you don't have to do your own research. Okay, the next question is, oh, all right. So this one is related back to education. Hugo Hule asked, was glad that Mary asked about the education component, and he asked for a reminder about the awful little plastic stickers that supermarkets put on every vegetable. So I'm not sure if that's going to be an education feature in your materials, Julie.
I am going to state that people should remove produce stickers. We recognize that there are billions and zillions and gajillions of produce stickers. I'm going to request that people remove them. Okay,
great, and hopefully people will. All right, let's see. Another question from Hugo was, will those of us who register be able to buy compost bags from UCRA at a discount once it's ready for use, or will people be paying the same price? I'm not sure if that's something that you can answer, Julie, or
this is for future phases. Will those of us who register be able to buy compost? Oh, like to use at home?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. I see that Angelina's on the call. If you wanted to chime in. Yep, Angelina did chime in. You want to read her comment?
Sure. Regarding Hugo's question regarding buying bagged compost at a discount price, UCRA's bagged compost is currently for sale through their website for $5 per 1 cubic foot. Yeah, yep. Bag. Our agency has a goal of working with local municipalities to further distribute bagged compost in the future, so there is certainly potential to work with the city on that. So thank you for that question. Okay, then the next question that we're going to move on to, which I believe was answered during the webinar by one of the slides, but it's always good to be reminded of this, is food soiled paper acceptable? And on that slide, Julie, you had that food soiled paper was acceptable, but I think there are some nuances to the type of food soiled paper, right? Like not waxed paper, even though it's food soiled, it's got to be uncoated paper. Is that correct?
Yeah, and again, if Angelina is willing to chime in on this one, I would defer, because I'm not sure entirely about things like paper towels and or what really food soiled things. We need some clarification on that, and I will get clarification on that before we launch. I don't know the answer right now. So, I mean, can I, Angelina,
I-
can I put you on the spot? Can I allow you to talk? I don't know if she wants to or not, but.
I will add that in the research that was done as part of the study, and this does not at all override anything that the implementer of a composting program, Akra and Angelina, will say. But the research that we did revealed that sometimes paper is not allowed because it shifts the balance or doesn't allow the composter to regulate the moisture rate, and that can have an impact on how long sometimes something, food waste takes to become compost. So depending on what UCRA's policies are, part of it may be related to that. So we will get back to that as.
Well, actually, Angelina's here. Angelina, do you mind chiming in? I'm going to put you on the spot, but.
Sure,
Okay.
not at all. Can you hear me through my headset okay?
Yes.
Oh, great. Well, also just opportunity to congratulate you once again on such a phenomenal program and all the hard work over 5 years that went into this. It's really excellent to see the city arrive at this point. So congrats. And yeah, this is a big question regarding the food soiled paper. And I really appreciate the desire to compost as many different materials as possible. I truly do. Emphasizing that this is a pilot project with the city. It's important to recognize that we may be working some kinks out and seeing, what type of material we're actually getting here at our composting facility in Kingston. So we are pretty restrictive with different types of paper products or quote unquote compostable products. Because we want the program to be as successful as possible. And sometimes paper products border on packaging. And so we really don't want there to be any confusion, especially as we're starting small and really trying to see this program scale up. So that might change in the future. Right now, our philosophy is to be very restrictive towards anything that's not actually food. And Julie, you did a really great job of emphasizing that. So thank you. So, what do I consider food soiled paper? Like an occasional napkin or paper towel is generally not going to be an issue for us if it's unbleached and it's unprinted and it hasn't been used to absorb any cleaning chemicals at all. If it's just a damp, occasional napkin or paper towel, that's fine. But of course, we want to encourage residents to go reusable and use cloth napkins in the kitchen for things like that as well. But I hope that provides some clarification. And yeah, that is we're willing to continue to look at that as you scale up and see how things are going. So thanks for the opportunity to chime in there.
Thanks. While I have you, this is totally unrelated. Will you accept oyster shells?
Oh, I love that question. And I am always amazed at all the amazing questions that come in. So as far as oyster shells, that should not be an issue for us. If the city has a citywide clam bake and you're going to have a whole tote bin filled with shells, maybe that's something we want to know about. So we might treat it a little bit differently. But yeah, an occasional seafood shells and things like that is not going to be an issue.
Awesome. Thanks. I don't anticipate having a citywide clam bake, but it would be awesome if we did. For those
If
folks
there
who-
is one, I want a special invite on gold paper, please, because I will definitely be there. All right. The next, let's see, I will go with my question, which I hadn't posted, is I was curious about the schedule of regular cleaning of the bins at the drop-off site. I was wondering if you had a sense of that.
So the plan right now is that, although I am telling you all on the inside now, although I'm telling folks that we're launching in the beginning of July, we really do plan to launch the last week in June, which is around the 26th, should everything go according to plan. And the first several weeks I will be, and so will the Department of Public Works will be monitoring each of the sites on the days of the tipping and disposal. We will be going with the packers out to the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency to witness the system. And we will be meeting and debriefing with the sanitation and laborers division of parks regularly in the first few months. In that process, we will plan to do several things. One, understand what the composition is of the compost, of the food scraps, but also understand, what is the integrity of the containers, the stored containers, the totes, all of those different things. Are the compostable bags that I'm using to line the containers working? All of this is why we're starting out very small, because there's a lot of things that we need to figure out as we go. And as was mentioned before, we're not able to just look to our neighboring community and say, oh, let's do it the same way these other communities are doing it, because other communities aren't really doing it. And so we're leading the way. That being said, there will be mechanisms that we have set up both within Department of Public Works and the Parks Department, since this is a multi-department commitment to clean. And so it's well on our radar. I can't sit here and say, on every Tuesday at 2:00, we're going to bring a packer there, a wash truck there and wash it. We don't know that yet. It's all going to have to unfold as we go. And it will probably change pretty regularly based on just troubleshooting. It's going to be troubleshooting on our part for several months.
And that is a great approach, given that the nuances of how anything is implemented within any municipality is quite different. So congratulations on that approach. Let's see. I am going to go right now to Emily Hauser's comment and / question. Emily was a participant and provided feedback during the development of the plan. So thanks to Emily for that. Emily says, this is so exciting. She would like for there to be a distinguishing between food waste separation versus composting. This program is for separating food waste to take to a drop-off site where it will then be taken for composting. Backyard composting instructions are needed also. Congrats to the City of Kingston for offering this.
That's a great comment. Thank you. And actually, I am working with Angelina. One of the resources that they have developed is a great backyard composting guide. We are still determining whether this will get put into the welcome packet or not. Certainly, we do understand that there will be a spectrum of folks who will participate in our drop-off program, people who also continue to compost at home. Maybe this is excess, or who don't compost at home, or who have never done it before, or sometimes compost at home and sometimes compost at the drop-off. So I'm definitely working. I hear that and certainly understand the value of backyard composting as well. As I mentioned, thus far, taking aside the 12 people that have already registered since we've been sitting here, there's already 48% of folks that are already composting, which is a very interesting piece of data to me, because that means that 48% of the folks either are composting and want another option, or don't want to compost at home anymore and want to switch to a municipal system. So this is all we're data hogs over here, Carla and Eleanor and I, and all of this is hopefully also going to serve as a model for other communities. I do want to be mindful of time, and I do want to also just thank so many people here, Eleanor and Carla for spending 5 years with me putting this together, Angelina for helping me move this forward for the next phase, and Veronica for doing the interpretation, and so many others who have informed this process. This webinar will be posted on the website, Engage Kingston. Please feel free to reach out to me if you filled out the registration and want to change something or add something. If you need more information, the only thing I can't provide you is if you're from another community, there's not much I can do for you except tell you that there are options with UCRA, Community Compost Company, and others for you to compost as well. I want to thank everyone for your time and for being here and for participating. I do want to thank Molly at Community Compost Company for collaboration there as well. And certainly moving forward into future phases, I'm sure we will be working very closely. So thank you, everyone, and separate food scraps, and I'll see you soon.
Happy composting, all.
Composting.